For a while, things hadn't been looking so great for the old Blue Bomber. But now, Capcom is celebrating Mega Man's 30th birthday in a big way in the form of the long-awaited Mega Man 11. Not one to be left out of the excitement, X gets his own due in the form of the Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1 and 2 on the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, which finally brings the series of games into the HD era. Thanks to a PS4 promo code from Capcom, we're able to take a deeper look at this collection and see how it stands up against the original games, as well as the X collection released back in 2006. I first played Mega Man X when I got the fated call from an electronics boutique when I was home from school on account of heavy snow. My pre-order copy was in, and I managed to hitch a ride to the mall with some friends. These days, the very first Mega Man X ranks as either my second or third favorite game in the entire Mega Man history. While the rest of the X series, I think that the only one that's really a must-play is probably X4. The newest release splits this series across two collections. X1 through 4 are in Collection 1, while X5 through 8 are in Collection 2. If you're buying digitally, you can buy one or the other, or together as a bundle, although I'm not quite sure why the decision was made to split this into two collections in the first place. Even if you buy the game physically, it's spread across two discs. It seems like these could be fit on one, right? And unfortunately for Switch owners, only the first collection is on the cart, while Part 2 is download only. The Mega Man X Legacy Collection was handled in-house by Capcom, with what looks like some assistance from the emulation gurus at M2. Although I don't know the extent of M2's involvement, there is a level of expertise in terms of the emulation quality, but more on that later. Each game is selectable through a fairly simple menu. Hitting square lets you toggle through different regions for each game. This is pretty much just the US or Japanese versions for the early games, but the PlayStation 2 era titles have a ton of different languages. Generally, the region differences are fairly minor things like text or some voiceover, but it should be noted that the Japanese intro song to X4 isn't included even when selecting that version. Must be some sort of licensing issue. Selecting a game loads it up nearly instantly, but there is a notable lack of frills that you might be expecting from classic game compilations these days. It certainly doesn't bother me, but it might be a deal breaker for some that there is no save state support in any of these games, nor is there any kind of rewind feature. However, if you're having a hard time getting acclimated, you can always enable the Rookie Hunter mode at any point. This changes the amount of damage you take from each hit and increases your firepower, thus making the games a bit easier. But beware, spikes and pits are still pretty deadly. For all intents and purposes, these games are almost all presented in their original form, unless you take into account the Maverick name changes in X5. Sorry, Duff McWhalen fans. It's worth mentioning here that the version of Mega Man X3 present in this collection is the Super NES version, and not the PlayStation 1 or Saturn version with the CD audio that was in the PS2 and GameCube collection. This should make a number of people happy, as the SNES music is generally considered superior to the CD tracks. It would have been nice to have the CD music toggleable though. On that same note, the version of X4 included here is the PS1 version and not the Saturn rendition that had additional background effects on some stages. Now obviously, the big question here is, how's the emulation quality? For a carefully curated collection such as this, it lives and dies by how well these games look, feel, and play. Are they any close to the original? Well, before we get into that, I think it's important that we take a step back and give a little context. In 2004, Capcom released the Mega Man Anniversary Collection for the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo GameCube, which was outsourced to the British studio Atomic Planet. This compilation features the original Mega Man 1 through 8, and the two CPS2 arcade games as unlockables. Although this was decent enough at the time, these compilations were marred with various issues such as wonky scaling, muffled audio, and on GameCube, an unforgivable reversal of the A and B buttons. Yikes. And it's too bad because these could have been so much better. Although the PlayStation 2 and GameCube were capable of 240p video output, like the NES, Super NES, and PlayStation 1, Atomic Planet instead opted to force the games to 480i, which usually results in a softer image. This was a common problem for compilations at the time. An Xbox version was released later in 2005, which does support 480p output, but it doesn't help all that much due to similarly poor scaling. It seems Capcom took the complaints to heart and took the development reins themselves to follow up with the Mega Man X collection, which released in 2006 for the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo GameCube. This compilation contains Mega Man X through Mega Man X6, along with the bonus game Mega Man Battle and Chase. X7 and X8 were omitted due to being fairly new releases on the PS2. The X collection was a massive improvement over the previous collection in pretty much every facet. Slowdown that occurred in the original SNES games was smoothed out, but the real key feature here is native 240p video output on both consoles. These games look simply fantastic, and totally accurate when played on a CRT television, especially with the added clarity of component video. This was a big bonus for North American players, who probably didn't have the means to use RGB video with the SNES or original PlayStation at the time of the game's original releases. However, a closer look reveals that while content is equal between the PS2 and Cube versions, it turns out that the PS2 version is an order of magnitude sharper across all included games. This is due to a forced flicker filter that the GameCube applies. Regardless, the choice is pretty clear if you're interested in either of these collections. Okay, now that we're all caught up after that little detour, let's take a closer look at the options available that the new Mega Man X Legacy Collection offer. Under Screen Options, you have 3 different image size options and 3 filter selections to choose from. Since the games included in the package were released on 3 different platforms, the Super NES, PlayStation 1, and PlayStation 2, it may not be a one-size-fits-all situation. Let's take a look at the filter types first. Type 1 is for people who don't care for the hard edges of pixel art, so it smooths out the overall image, giving it a bit of a cel-shaded look. It's largely reminiscent of the HQX filter you tend to see included in other compilations. There also seems to be some sort of strange pixel filter anomalies on certain areas of the screen and artwork using this filter. I have no idea what's up with that. Type 2 is the now expected CRT simulation filter that adds faint scan lines and a layer of noise over top of the image. After the scanline implementation of Digital Eclipse's Mega Man Legacy Collection, I personally find that this interpretation is pretty unconvincing. Type 3 removes all filters and gives you a raw, sharp pixel output. This is my preferred way to play. But as we know, sharp pixels can come with a little baggage due to the need to be scaled up to high definition. Which brings us to the 3 image size selections available to us. Type 1 keeps the original aspect ratio and expands it to fill your screen's vertical space. This means that the image will retain its original 4:3 aspect ratio while reaching the top and bottom of your screen. As we know by now, if a game is improperly scaled from its original resolution, it can lead to a shimmering or swimming during scrolling because pixels aren't uniform. Since many of the games in this collection were presented in 240p originally, which cannot be integer scaled to 1080p, this does present a challenge in trying to determine how to best fill the screen. Which brings us to Type 2, which is designed to scale the original vertical resolution by 4, which does not quite fill the 1080p output, leaving some blank space around the game image. In theory, this would be great if it was tailored on a per-platform basis, but instead a one-size-fits-all method was employed. It seems that this mode was designed to perform an integer scale for games that run at 320 by 240, which gives us a perfect image for PS1 games, square pixels and no shimmering. However, since SNES games display at 256 wide, a horizontal integer scale would result in a skinny aspect ratio. Instead of interpolating the horizontal axis as seen in Digital Eclipse's work, pixel columns are scaled unevenly. While not ideal, this thankfully turns out to be only a minor blemish. Due to the SNES game's movement speed, the telltale shimmer effect is nearly impossible to see in most situations. Regardless, Type 2 does present your best option for Mega Man X1 through 6. However, applying this sizing option to X7 and 8 actually squeezes the image down and you'll needlessly lose clarity. These versions of Mega Man X7 and X8 appear to be rendered internally at 1440 by 1080 to create a simply stunning image. To take full advantage of this high-resolution render, you should use the zoomed-in Type 1 scaling. In my opinion, this is probably the absolute best way to play these two games, and I gotta hand it to the devs for going the extra mile and giving the 3D graphics this special treatment. I'm really happy they did. It's just too bad they couldn't also fix the 2D artwork scaling in X8. It was also wrong in the original game too. Sizing Type 3 throws all that other stuff out the window and just stretches the image to fill the full 16:9 screen size. If you're into that kind of thing, well, this will make you happy. Personally, I'm not, but you do what you want. Unfortunately, there is no 4K support in this collection, which could have offered a perfect integer scale for all the 240p games. I have no idea why this feature keeps being left out of these classic game compilations, but maybe it'll become more common in the coming years. Naturally, you can fill the negative space around the game image with a number of different borders, although, I prefer just to have the black empty frame. So, how about the audio? Well, to my ears, everything sounds pretty great, for the most part.
You've got some explaining to do.
Okay, I'll tell you everything, but later! Right now, I have to take care of that freak!
While the previous collection streams audio from the disc, I suspect that in this case, audio is simply emulated from the original platforms. Overall sound levels seem to be reduced from the originals, but that was also the case with the previous collection. I did hear a little bit of audio skipping during the intro to X3, but that was the only place that seemed to crop up in my testing. Oh yeah, and thankfully, I didn't notice any of the sound delay issues that seems to be plaguing a number of recent emulation compilations, so that's good news. As far as input lag, I didn't have any real issues, although I'm not ultra sensitive to it. Of course, due to the way that the different technologies work together in these consoles, it should be expected for some degree of lag to exist over the original platforms. One final thing to note about the emulation is that this collection has opted to retain the slowdown of the original games to some extent, instead of completely removing it like the previous collection. I like to think of it as more authentic to the original games, but I can see how it would annoy some people. As far as bonus materials go, I was surprised to see how extensive the museum is. I think the fans are really going to eat up the artwork galleries, soundtrack jukeboxes, and commercials. There's just a ton of goodies here. The product gallery was especially cool, although I wish you could kind of zoom in on the pictures themselves. Also included in this section is the full Day of Sigma prequel movie that was included with Maverick Hunter X on the PlayStation Portable. Man, I just love the intense voice acting in this. There doesn't seem to be any hidden titles in this collection, which is fine, I suppose. But it would have been amazing to have something like Maverick Hunter X available here. It does look like there are some extra borders to unlock though. The final bonus feature, and perhaps the biggest allure for some people, is the X Challenge. This mode is a full-on minigame where you take on multiple bosses at one time with a loadout of your choosing. Think of it kind of like a reverse dramatic battle from Street Fighter Alpha 3, but way more chaotic. I think that this is a pretty great mode that fans are gonna love, but for me, it's just a little bit too crazy. There's just too much going on at one time. Although, I'm sure with some practice my mind could be changed. One thing I did love though was the remixed music that combines the boss themes from each game. So, what is the best way to play the Mega Man X series? Well, the truth is, all the available options seem to be excellent choices. Unlike the original series, which had its ups and downs when it comes to re-releases and compilations, the X series has been treated respectfully throughout its life. So I personally think that the Mega Man X Legacy Collection is a great way to bring these games into the HD era. Although the lack of modern emulation features and 4K support will sour some, I think this is still a great way to preserve the history of the series as it stands at this point in time. And even though the quality of the X series is certainly a bit uneven, there's no denying that several of them have endured as some of the best action platformers of all time.